There's an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where money weighs more than a car. I'm not being poetic. The coins on this island are literally 12-foot wide stone wheels that weigh 4 tons. And the wildest part isn't the size. It's that when one of these giant stones sank to the bottom of the ocean during a storm, everyone on the island just shrugged and said, yeah, that still counts. A rock sitting on the ocean floor, completely invisible, completely unreachable, and the entire island agreed it was still worth a fortune. If that sounds insane to you, I need you to pull out your phone right now and look at your bank balance, because you're doing the exact same thing. Let's go back about 500 years. There's a tiny cluster of islands in the western Pacific called Yap. 4 main islands, surrounded by coral reef, covered in jungle, population of maybe a few thousand people. Yap had fish, Yap had coconuts, Yap had tropical hardwood, but Yap did not have one thing: stone. Not the kind that mattered anyway. No limestone, nothing you could carve or polish into something beautiful. And according to Yapi's legend, a navigator named Anagumang set out on a voyage with 7 companions to find something rare. They paddled over 400 kilometers across open ocean in outrigger canoes until they reached a distant island chain called Palau. And in Palau, they found it. Crystalline limestone. Sparkling, pale, almost white. A rock that didn't exist anywhere on Yap. Legend says Anagumang's crew experimented with different shapes for the stone. Fish, turtles, crescent moons. But Anagumang looked up at the sky one night and chose the shape of a full moon. A perfect circle with a hole cut through the center, so you could slide a pole through it and carry it. They loaded the carved stones onto bamboo rafts, set them loose into the ocean current, and chased them home in their canoes. And that is how Yap invented money. Now here's where it gets interesting. These stones are called Rai, and their value did not work like any currency you've ever seen. You might assume that bigger stones were worth more money. And yes, size mattered. A 12-foot disc was worth more than a 2-foot disc. But size was not the main thing. The most important factor in a Rai stone's value was its story. How far did the stone travel? How dangerous was the voyage? How many men set out to bring it back? And here's the dark part. How many men died trying? If a crew of 20 men sailed to Palau, carved a stone, and only 8 men made it home alive, that stone was worth dramatically more than a stone brought back by a crew that had an easy trip. The stone carried the weight of human sacrifice inside its history. Every single person on the island knew these stories. They were passed down orally from generation to generation. The stone didn't just represent value. It contained a verifiable public record of human effort and human cost. But here's the part that really breaks your brain. Because these stones could weigh up to 4 tons, most of them never moved. When you paid someone with a Rai stone, you didn't roll a 4-ton rock across the island to their house. You just told everyone it belonged to them now. The stone stayed exactly where it was, maybe leaning against a meeting house, maybe sitting on the side of a path where it had been for 100 years. But the entire community updated their mental record of who owned it. No bank, no paper receipt, no app, no government, just a community of people who collectively agreed. That stone now belongs to this family, and everybody remembered. This is what historians now call an oral ledger system. Every person on the island was essentially a living node in a human database, keeping track of who owned what. If you think that sounds familiar, you're right. That is literally how a blockchain works. Bitcoin is a digital currency where no physical coins exist. Ownership is just a record on a shared public ledger that thousands of computers maintain simultaneously. Nobody holds a Bitcoin. You hold a key that proves the ledger says you own it. The Yapis figured out this exact concept 500 years ago, except their computers were human brains, and their blockchain was a community-wide oral tradition, a network of people agreeing on who owns what, with no central authority controlling the record. And just like Bitcoin, Rai stones derived their value from the difficulty of mining them. Bitcoin mining requires massive amounts of computational energy to solve complex math problems. That energy cost is what makes each coin scarce and valuable. Rai stone mining required sailing 400 kilometers across open ocean, quarrying limestone by hand with shell and coral tools, and hauling a multi-ton disc back on a bamboo raft. The energy cost was human lives. Different technology, identical logic. Now let me tell you the story of the stone at the bottom of the ocean. There was a crew transporting a particularly large, beautiful Rai stone back from Palau. During the voyage, a massive storm hit. The bamboo raft broke apart, and the stone sank straight to the bottom of the sea. The crew survived. They made it back to Yap, and they told everyone what happened. Now here's the question that should be keeping economists up at night. Did the stone stop being money? The entire island said no. Everyone knew the stone existed. Everyone knew it had been carved. Everyone knew the story of its creation and the storm that swallowed it. The fact that no human being could ever see it, touch it, or physically reach it again did not matter, because the community agreed on its history and agreed on its owner. The stone continued to function as currency. It was traded. It changed hands. Families used it to settle major transactions, marriages, political agreements. An invisible rock on the ocean floor, participating in an economy run entirely on collective human memory. If you think that's wild, wait until the Germans showed up. In 1899, Germany purchased the island of Yap, as a colonial territory. The German administrators needed the Yapese to repair the island's roads and pathways. The Yapese didn't want to. Now, if you're a colonial power trying to force labor from a population, you'd normally threaten them with jail or violence or seize their property. But the Germans looked at the Yapese economy and realized something brilliant and terrifying. The Yapese didn't care about German marks. They didn't care about European money at all. Their wealth was in the stones. So the German officials sent agents across the island with buckets of black paint. They walked up to the most valuable Rai stones, stones that had been sitting in the same spot for generations, and painted a large black cross on them. That cross meant the German government now owned the stone. The stones didn't move. Nobody touched them. Nobody hauled them away. A man just painted a mark on a rock. And the Yapese families who owned those stones were instantly bankrupted. Because in a system built entirely on community consensus about ownership, all you have to do is change the consensus. The Yapese repaired the roads, and when the Germans were satisfied, they sent the agents back to wash off the black paint. Ownership was restored. The families celebrated. Let me say that again. A group of people became poor, did manual labor, and then became rich again. And the only thing that changed in the physical world was the color of paint on a rock. Now, here's where the story gets one final twist. In the late 1800s, an Irish-American trader named David Dean O'Keefe got shipwrecked on Yap. O'Keefe noticed that the Yapese would do almost anything for Rai stones, so he made them an offer. He would use his large western ships to transport stones from Palau to Yap, faster, safer, and in much bigger quantities than the traditional canoe expeditions. He also gave them iron tools from Hong Kong, replacing the primitive shell and coral tools they'd been using for centuries. Suddenly, stones that used to take months of dangerous labor to produce could be churned out quickly and shipped back easily. O'Keefe flooded the island with new stones, and guess what happened? Inflation. The same thing that happens when any government prints too much money. The Yapese weren't stupid. They looked at O'Keefe's stones and said, "These don't count the same." The old stones carved with primitive tools transported on bamboo rafts across deadly open ocean. Those stones had stories of sacrifice. Those stones had real value. O'Keefe's stones were made with iron tools and delivered on a comfortable ship. No one died, no one suffered, so the community devalued them. The new stones were worth less, precisely because they were easier to make. The Yapese had independently discovered and rejected quantitative easing, the exact monetary policy that modern central banks use when they pump extra currency into an economy and watch the value of every existing dollar slowly erode. So let's come back to your phone. You have a number on your screen. Maybe it says $2,000. Maybe it says 50. That number is not sitting in a vault somewhere. Your bank does not have a little pile of cash with your name on it. Your money is a record on a digital ledger, maintained by a network of institutions that all agree on who owns what. You can't touch it. You can't see it. If every computer in that network lost your record, your money would simply stop existing. You are living in the Rai stone economy. The only difference is that the Yapese were honest about it. They never pretended the stone needed to be in front of you to have value. They never pretended you needed to physically hold your wealth for it to be real. They understood 500 years before anyone invented a blockchain that money has never been about the object. It's about the story everyone agrees to believe. That stone at the bottom of the ocean is still worth a fortune today, and the number on your phone is worth exactly as much as everyone else agrees it is. Not 1 cent more.